Hello and welcome to and all. So we'll continue with the GST. The previous class, I've explained to you what is the meaning of GST and why it has to be introduced in our country and what are all the components of GST. That is central CGST, state goods and service tax SGST, and integrated goods and service tax IGST. Now the second part, what is the impact of GST on Indian economy? So the first one is, the first and basic advantage of GST is GST reduces tax burden on producers and encourages or induces growth through more production. One thing you have to understand is GST is a single tax replacing several taxes which were existing in our country before. So the producers, they were burdened with so many different varieties of taxes. I mentioned you, it was all confusing for everyone. So instead of different taxes, only single tax, it was easy for them to understand and it is easy for them to comply with the tax requirements. So that indirectly reduced the burden on the producers, and they were encouraged to increase the production that induced growth in the country. Okay. Then the second is different tax barriers. So some of the, such as checkposts and toll plazas. You know that all these tolls and all, there are different checkposts at every toll plaza, at every checkpost and all. They have to pay the tax, isn't it? So what was happening here lead to wastage of unpreserved items being transported. That means what? Because of the delay in all these places, toll plazas and checkposts, in order to pay the tax, that the delay was happening. So if it is happening in the case of perishable commodities, unpreserved items being transported. So if those kind of goods are being carried on and they have to be paying the taxes at different places, which is causing that delay, then it is becoming a wastage. Unpreserved items in the sense that perishable commodities. So because of that delay, all those perishable commodities are being wasted because of the delay caused in different places for the payment of tax. So this, because of this, what they have to do, so the producers are forced to store or their commodities, their goods in warehouses as buffer stock. So since they cannot transport the goods immediately because of the delay in all these places, the producer, they are forced to store their goods in the warehouses buffer stock, which increased the cost of production or cost of storing, whatever it is. Ultimately, the cost for the producer is being increasing. So all these were, so if it is only one tax, all these extra costs will be avoided by the producers. So in a single taxation system eliminates this roadblock. Literally, it's a roadblock, or eliminates this problem. Okay, so that is the second impact or benefit. And then the third one is, there is, you can say, more transparency in the system. So instead of having multiple taxes, at multi-stage level. If it is only a single tax and at only one stage, then it is more easy to understand for the consumers, and since it is more transparent. So it is more transparency in the system, as whoever is paying the taxes, they will know exactly how much they are paying. So as the customers know exactly how much taxes they are being charged, and also on what base. So if it is very clear to the person who is actually paying the taxes, why he is paying, on what purpose for what purpose he is paying, and also how much tax he has to pay to the government. And another advantage to the government is GST adds to the government revenue. How it is increasing the government revenue by extending the tax base. So instead of having different uh, taxes with smaller amount of taxes, if it is a one single tax, then the tax base is widened, isn't it? So if the tax base is widened, automatically the revenues for the government will also increase. So different taxes, that is one thing. So it has to be smaller amount of tax should be paid by different points of sales and multi-stage level taxes, and it is so many people will try to escape the tax. So that also was limiting the revenues for the government. So if it is a one tax and also at one stage, then everybody will be covered in the tax. So the tax base will also widen, most of the people will be covered under the tax thing, so the government revenue will also increase. Okay, then the next impact or advantages, GST provides, there's something called as credit for taxes paid by producers on the goods and services chain. In the goods and services chain. See, first let me finish it, then I'll explain to you. So this is expected to encourage producers to buy raw materials from different registered dealers and is hoped to bring more vendors and suppliers under the purview of taxation. So the meaning of this is, see, there is something called as the credit for taxes. Suppose if any producer is uh, able to bring in more number of people under the tax regime, under the purview of taxation, then the government gives credit to that producer. Okay, so tax credit is given to the producer. Suppose, for example, if a producer, let us say, the producer has to pay tax to the government to the extent of 10,000, and if this producer is bringing more and more people, more and more of number of dealers under the purview of taxation, then the government is encouraging the producer by giving certain amount of concessions in paying the tax in the form of the tax credit. So let us assume the government is giving a tax credit of 2,000 rupees. So now the producer, he need not have to pay 10,000 as the tax. He has to pay only, needs to pay only 8,000. Why the government is giving this discount? This like a discount. So why the government is giving the discount to this producer? Because he has brought in more number of people in the tax regime. So more number of people will be covered under the tax. So because of that reason, the government wants to encourage this producer, and in turn, this producer will also be induced, encouraged to bring more and more people under the purview of taxation. So more dealers, different vendors, different dealers who were escaping the taxes before. So all those people will be covered under the tax regime. So in that way, the producer is also encouraged. The government is also getting more amount of revenue, and more people will be brought under the purview of taxation. So this is like a discount the government is concession giving to the producer for having brought the people who were earlier escaping the payment of taxes. So now they are also in the purview of taxation. For that, the government is giving an encouragement by giving a certain amount of discount. So that is what is known as tax credit. Okay, there might be so many reasons. Suppose if the producer is using maybe in the backward areas, he's establishing a project, or it is basically the behavior of whatever the type of commodity is selling, or if he wants to, the solar panel is being used. So there might be different reasons the government gives the tax credit to your producer. Okay, so this will both the government will also benefit, and the revenues of the government will also increase, and more people will be covered under the tax regime, and the people who are honestly paying the taxes, they will also get the discount from the government in the form of tax credit. So that is the another advantage. Then the next one is GST removes the custom duties applicable on exports. So GST is for imports only, not on exports. So exports are favored here. Okay. So the IGST covers the import of commodities. So the nations, so producers will be more encouraged to export their commodities. So the nations competitiveness, so automatically they will be encouraged. So the domestic producers competitiveness in foreign markets will improve. So in foreign markets, because their cost of production will reduce because of non-payment of there's no need to pay the export tax to the export duty to the government. So will increase on account of lower costs of production transaction. Okay, so this is the second part of the question. What is the impact of GST on the Indian economy? First one, why is GST introduced in our country, and state its impact on Indian economy. So this is the impact of GST on the Indian economy. Okay, then the next structural reform which was introduced in our country, apart from demonetization and GST, was the Make in India program. Okay, so this one actually launched before demonetization. So the Make in India, but all these were the initiatives once the economy started picking up after the economic reforms were introduced in our country. So Making India initiative was launched in India in September 2014. So the reason for introducing this Make in India initiative was in 2013, the growth rate of the Indian economy was very, very low. So the growth rate had fallen to a lowest level. So because by 2013, we are well into the globalization thing, isn't it? So because of the problems arising across the world, it will affect us also. So during this period of time, several countries went into recession and all. So 2008, it started in US, and India and China escaped that recession in 2008. But later, slowly, it affected all the emerging economies, including India. And by 2013 and all, the growth level was very, very low in our country. So in order to push up the growth level, something has to be done in the country. So this program was designed by the government. So making it, this is nothing but the name itself says, make the invent and make the products within the country itself. Okay, instead of, so whatever the commodities which are services which we used to import from the other countries, identify those commodities, those areas, and whatever the products that can be produced within the country itself. So all those commodities will be encouraged to be produced within the country. It is like import substitution. Okay, so Make in India is a program started mainly to improve Indian economic conditions. That's what in 2013, India was under a very, very low level of economic growth. So how the government planned to achieve? By encouraging the companies. By encouraging the companies, not only the domestic companies, even the foreign companies also. So many assistance. So the government is preferring startups, isn't it? So many concessions were given by the subsidies, and concessions were given by the government for startups in the country. So encouraging them. Okay, so both domestic and foreign, to set up their plants in India. Okay, so the main objective is to change India into a something called as a manufacturing hub at the center of global economy. So many foreign companies have also entered into our country to set up their own plant because of the facilities and because of the encouragement given by the country. Apple has started their plant in Bangalore, and we are also, instead of importing so many commodities earlier, whatever we were importing certain commodities from the other countries like China and all, now we are manufacturing on our own. And you can see with the recent private sector entering into the space, launching of the rocket. So like that, whatever commodities that can be manufactured within our country can be manufactured, and at the same time encouraging the foreign companies also to set up their plants in our country. So some of the sectors, so Make in India scheme includes the following sectors. So starting from automobile and automobile components. So ports and shipping. So recently, the government in the Indians started shipping containers, which we were earlier importing from China. So now it has been encouraged to manufacture within our country itself. And of course, railways, you must have heard about that Vande Bharat. So at a fraction of the cost which is being manufactured in the other countries. So that is being again indigenously developed within our country. And in the area of space, not to mention about our IT and BPM. So like that, food processing. So all these areas, etc. So many are there. So all these areas, the Make in India program has been encouraged by the government. Okay. So these were all the other structural reform that have been introduced in our country. Now this is what is about the economic reforms as well as the other major reforms introduced in our country. So on the whole, to put it, all these Make in India and GST, all those things were because of the growth we achieved because of the economic reforms introduced in our country. So on the whole, you can say that economic reforms played a more positive role than the negative impact it had on our country. Okay. So the next topic we will see the what is the meaning of small scale and cottage industries, and what are all the problems, and what is the role played by the small scale and cottage industries in the development of our country. Okay, which I will explain to you in my next class. Okay, so if you find this video useful, please like, share, and also subscribe. And if you have any doubts, please mention in the comment box. So until my next class, take care. Bye bye.